Hello and welcome to Arsenal Unabridged. I'm your host Fen, and today we're going to begin our unabridged journey through the arsenal of the Grineer, as we take an LTTP look at the Javlok. Now, with the advent of the spear gun weapon type, a lot of people were stoked, especially Stargate fans, myself included, and we just could not wait for the opportunity to use a weapon like this and channel our inner Goa'uld and unleash hell in our gaming continuity of choice. Thank you, DE, for this beautiful, beautiful weapon type. Now, the Javlok itself can be acquired from your Kim Lab in your clan dojo, where you can research the Grineer tech for your own utility. Upon completion of the Ignis, you can research this weapon to gain 3000 clan affinity, and as far as research goes, it's fairly simple to get everything you need. The closest thing to a rare requirement is a detonite ampule, but otherwise, most players should have the required resources just kind of lying around. Now, construction is a bit of a different story, as it has 3 rare resource requirements. The first is the detonite inject, which it requires 5. The second is the 19 extract, also requiring 5, and the third is the Javlok capacitor, which requires 6 in total. Now, just to provide you with some realistic expectations, assuming that you don't have stockpiles of them laying around, acquiring the injectors will require a minimum of 6 missions consisting of 2 invasions that each offer 3 detonite injectors. Nitane may be acquired by some very, very lucky sorties, but otherwise you're gonna have to farm them over 5 separate alerts. Now, as for the Javlok capacitors, this resource can exclusively be farmed from the prosecutors on Ceres. Now, the wiki implies that it's simple to farm them, but to be honest, it's yet another RNG bastard child. Some people have prosecutors rain down on them, whilst others still see the prosecutor maybe every 10 missions. I would be the latter, and since they only drop a couple at a time, it could take a while. Now, that said, if you don't have the spares laying around, you could expect to farm the rare parts for the Javlok in around 6 invasion missions, 5 alerts, and 3 missions on Ceres. Do keep in mind that that is very optimistic though. Once you have undergone all of that, so long as you are mastery level 6, you can start it, and 24 hours or 35 platinum later, you will have your exploding death stick. But of course, assuming that you don't have time for the grind, you can purchase the weapon for 240 platinum, complete with a slot and a catalyst. Now, if you're a completionist, as I am, it also has a Harkonnen skin, available solo or as part of a bundle. Now, cosmetically speaking, DE really knew what they were doing. You may have noticed that the spikes on the business end of the alternate fire mode, they very closely resemble the triggers basically for underwater mines, which will explode when the spine is pressed hard enough. They can also be found on some incendiary bombs. It's the little things like this that make the game feel as if it's got a dose of gritty reality. Now, as far as stats are concerned, this weapon is pretty solid. The trigger mechanic is charge based, and as far as charge weapons go, this weapon begins with a quick 0.3 seconds charge time, making it nearly as fast as the Raktacernos on its primary fire. Its critical chance is also solid, starting at 20%. Its primary damage type is heat, which makes a larger percentage of the weapon damage capable of combining into elemental combinations. Now, at 25%, the status is admirable, and if this weapon had a reasonable magazine or a fire mechanic more like the Scourge, it would be a reliable hybrid weapon. What makes this weapon so much more interesting than many of the ones in game is the 3 different fire modes. Wait. Now, just wait. Don't get pissed, okay? Just hear me out and I'll explain. Yes, there are 3 fire modes. Now, the standard fire has some margin for error as it explodes on impact, dealing damage over 3.2 meters from edge to edge. Now, this higher fire rate is good for spreading status, brings synergy to condition overload and stuff like that. The critical chance makes this weapon a viable candidate for Hunter's munition, but I really wouldn't put my eggs in that basket with this weapon. The travel speed does require leading your targets a bit, so as long as you're kind of aiming closer to the ground, the splash damage will make up for that. So the alternate fire is a bit more interesting. Now, you can hold the alternate fire button to launch the weapon and exploit its secondary effects. Chief among them is the fact that you can launch it, which will unleash an explosion. You can even launch it with no ammunition remaining, which reminds me kind of the trope where someone kind of runs out of ammo and then they throw the gun. So a lot of folks really don't get the importance of the AoE, or how powerful the ability to expand the width can be. The explosion size is 14 meters across at base, but it can be expanded with Firestorm to 17.36 meters across. So at 14, your AoE will contain 154 square meters. Expanding this with Firestorm, even though it caps at 24%, will increase the area of effect to just over 236 square meters. Now, factoring in the square meters will not have the most utility, but in some scenarios, it can. For instance, in a COD, since the AoE is a sphere, in using it against some side of the upper level or something, the explosion will annihilate targets coming from above as well as below. Just think about your positioning. Now, what makes this weapon even more useful is the third fire mode. And yes, it does have a third. Kind of. So, the first alt-fire mode results from holding the alt-fire button, or wherein it launches fast and explodes on impact. It's pretty savage. The second alt-fire results from just tapping the alt-fire once. And when you simply tap and release, it will travel much more slowly. And once it makes impact, it will not explode, but instead, it will show the area of effect in the weapon's energy color, and after a 2-second delay, it will then produce the same explosion. Now you tell me, is this a different fire mode or not? One launches fast, explodes on impact, and doesn't highlight the AoE. The other one travels much more slowly, highlights the incoming blast AoE, and then explodes after a 2-second delay. The second alt-fire mode allows you to safely use this weapon in close quarters combat by highlighting the blast, giving you time to either get out of the AoE or possibly collect the Javlok before it blows. This drastically makes it easier to lead targets by planting the Javlok with the delay where you know the enemies are going to be. This capability will find far less utility in the plains, obviously, but it will find a lot of utility in the star chart, which have predictable spawn locations and enemy routes. Another feature that's really cool and unique is the way the damage scales by adding an additional 20% damage to the alt-fire for every remaining round. The base magazine size contains 6 rounds when full, and if launched, it will deal an additional 120% damage. If you elected to throw it with 0 rounds in the magazine, it will simply do the base damage listed when you're looking at it in your arsenal. And because of this feature, a God Roll Riven will look very different on this weapon than it would with any other weapon. I would say that a God roll for this would be a combination of damage, crit chance, magazine capacity, maybe a penalty to IPS, mostly impact if possible. Now, just to show you how useful it can be, I actually have 2 ribbons, one of which has additional magazine capacity. And using this ribbon in tandem with the Tainted Mag, it grants me a magazine size of 12, and when full, this increases the damage of my alternate fire by 240%. Now, if you elected to go with Wildfire, you could do so with an additional 60% heat damage, as well as 2 additional rounds, which will make the secondary fire significantly more powerful. So we would have all of the basics out of the way. So why don't we move on to applications? Now, first and foremost, we could look at synergy. And as a crit weapon, this will synergize with damaging enhancing frames, obviously, such as Chroma, Banshee, Rhino, or with frames that augment criticals, like Harrow or Volt. Now, when it comes to deployable aspects, you can find some synergy with frames, though they are not many. Mag is one, wherein her ability to magnetize will pull the spear gun directly to the target, making it so that there is no damage fall off over range, and the base IPS stats are guaranteed to hit. You can also get some major use out of Zephyr's augment, Jetstream, which effectively combines the 2 alt-fire modes, and with power strength, Jetstream will launch the Javlok nearly fast enough to be considered hit scan at reasonable ranges, even if you are just tapping the button. This combination will allow you to quickly launch it while keeping the delay, making it a good strategic combination. Frames like Nesha, who deal a great amount of damage over time by simply traveling a lot, can also make good use of stuff like this. It can travel out of the blast radius quickly, it provides a heavy hitting AoE in case their normal Firewalker DPS isn't enough, and with his ability to move at great speeds, he can lead targets like few other frames can. He can find great tactical angles, and this goes for Volt as well. And finally, there is an aspect that is not directly tied to any frame, and that is the reactant buff in fissure missions. With the bottomless clip that you gain from that, you can launch the Javlok without having to reload, while maintaining your 120% damage enhancement from the full clip. And with that being said, the Javlok has a lot more going for it than a lot of people have led you probably to believe. It has frame synergy, it has tactical alternate fires, it has damage buffs, it has pure elemental damage, it's a hard-hitting area of effect, and all in all, it's a pretty solid weapon. But that is all there is to the Javlok. Now, if you like what I do, be sure to like this video. If there's something that I missed, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe for more Warframe content, and if you can't wait to hear my voice, you can always hit the notification button for instant gratification. Until next time, this is Fen, signing off.